Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Interact and our panel today titled Connecting Developers to the Business Bottom Line. I'm your panel moderator, Dan Lines. I'm the host of the Dev Interrupted podcast and co-founder and COO of LinearB. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that I think every engineering leader obsesses over. It's around, is my team solving the right problem for the business? And if so, how do I know? It sounds simple enough, but it's easier said than done. I personally think about this all the time. In fact, it's one of the reasons that I co-founded LinearB. And so to help us answer this question, we've assembled some of the smartest engineering leaders in the business. With us here today, we have Rukmini Reddy, SVP of Engineering at Slack. Rukmini, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Dan.
Awesome. We also have James Stanier, Director of Engineering at Shopify. James, welcome to the panel.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And finally, we have Smruti Patel, Head of Engineering for Data Platform at Stripe. Smruti, welcome to the panel.
Thanks, Dan. Hey, everybody. Excited to be here.
We have an all-star cast here. Excellent, excellent stuff. Thank you all so much for being here today. So let's get started by knowing our panelists. We'll start with you, Rukmini. Your path into engineering is super inspirational. Growing up, you were one of the first girls at your school to ever use a computer. What has your background taught you about solving for the right problem?
It's interesting. I think being a woman in tech, whether I was 8 years old, learning Logo for the first time, or today, it's never easy. And I'll share an example of what's solving for the right problem. Several years ago, I was offered the transition from an independent contributor on the team, from an IC to a manager. And there was a real business need for it because the team had scaled rapidly and I was good with people and it felt like the right match at the right time. But as all I see is, I went through all the stages of grief when someone first talks to you about management. And when I leaned in a little harder, I think it came down to being afraid to do something new and fearful of the consequences of trying it. Just like that first time I had used a computer. And, fear, but for me, my mantra is like fear and courage go hand in hand. And I evaluate every new business opportunity with a decision raiser of, will I regret not taking this on? And that has served me really well. And every time I've done that, growth has happened for me personally. And it's helped me focus on what's right for the business as well.
Yeah, very, very cool. Thanks for sharing that story and a little bit about yourself and your background. James, we're going to go to you next just for a quick intro. So in addition to being Shopify's Director of Engineering, you're also an accomplished author. What has the process of writing a book taught you about engineering leadership?
Sure. Thanks for the compliment. I think what it taught me is that we're really a small group and we really need to support each other. Like through the last few years, I've met so many people, virtually, physically, who said, "Oh, hey, I read your book and it really helped me." And I think the amount of material that's out there for all of us as we get better at our jobs and we bring the next generation into our jobs as well. We need to be there. We need to have the materials, need to be able to connect and support each other on this journey.
Absolutely. And finally, Smruti, Stripe is one of the biggest payment processing platforms in the world. Everybody knows Stripe. What has your role at Stripe taught you about connecting devs to business?
Dan, that's a great question. At Stripe, I lead the data platform group. This is responsible for critical data infrastructure, tooling, and abstractions, which support the core of Stripe's business, money coming out, the payment processing, money going out, in addition to key data products for Stripe's users. So as you can imagine, on any given day, we deal with a number of business use cases, variety of user cohorts, including different levels of user sophistication. We're routinely asking ourselves, like, hey, which KPI do I prioritize? Do I focus on optimizing costs for our data systems, or do we secure them for least privilege? Because data privacy is super important. And do we prioritize the productivity of, say, our ML engineers or our go-to-market sales engineers? Do we reduce our own tech debt and toil? Or do we provide user-facing value? And so how do we decide all that? And so through all this, basically, what I have learned is it comes down to building that bridge between business value for our users, including team velocity and engineering velocity, down to individual intrinsic motivation. So that's how I think about connecting devs to the business outcomes.
Very well said. Question for everyone or anyone on the panel. We all know like the economic climate has been a little bit tight right now, like the amount of engineers you can hire, kind of more on efficiency. How has that affected you all and your teams?
I can jump in. It really has. I mean, unfortunately, Shopify did have a layoff round, which was, I think, the first time in Shopify's history that ever happened. So that was shocking and surprising, and it was, very sad for the people that went. And certainly, we know that we have to be very lean now. We have to make sure that everyone's working on the most essential problems. We can't turn on the hiring tap to solve problems for everything anymore. So it's metrics, it's being obsessed about our merchants and our users and just making sure that we're all really doing the highest impact things at all times.
What James said resonates a lot, especially the bit around being laser focused on the problems we're solving. At Stripe, and especially for data platform, for us, it's been about which right problems do we solve, whether we're optimizing for the next 18 months or the 3+ years. And then you start evaluating, your business strategy, your product strategy, and say, okay, what does your entire group or org focus on? And asking ourselves the really hard questions, including what are we not going to do, as hard as it may be. What I often tell my group is it's not just important to focus on what we can do. On any given day, we're going to have more problems to solve than people. But it is absolutely crucial to also be intentional about what we are choosing to not do, given the climate around us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you all feel like you're having to kind of defend your choices more or show any more visibility? Is there any like pressure changes that are coming from the business or like a CEO onto you?
I don't think so. That's not the culture of Slack. I think it always, like to what Smriti said, you'll always have more things to do than you can actually do. Whether it's your company's in growth mode, even if you were to go out and hire someone, it's going to take you a good 3 months to bring talent in and another 3 months to onboard them. So there's no universe in which you can solve an immediate business need, macroeconomic conditions, pertaining in 6 months, right? So you need to be, I think your most important role as an engineering leader and as an engineer on the team is to say no to things that won't add value to your customers. And that is irrespective of the current situation. So for us, I think we are like everybody else. We try to do more with less, which means we have to work. I'll say to my team that we have to work smarter, not harder. Should not be an environment in which we should burn our people out. That's not what we're out to do. What's really important, we should be efficient about the work we pick up. We need to be smart about the decisions we are making.
Yeah, absolutely. Efficiency has been certainly that's kind of the word that I'm hearing over and over again. And actually it might lead well into our next topic here. So, of course, everyone on this panel has been an engineer in the past. As engineers, we love to solve problems. But also because we're all engineers, we know it's not always easy to solve the right problems or know we're doing the right thing. James, you have this concept of shipping theater that I wanted you to share, where teams become so obsessed with process and delivery, maybe they lose focus on what really matters. And you also have said something like org chart is shipping itself into the product. Can you explain to the panel this concept?
James, firstly, before you start, I absolutely love this term. I would love to hear how you got it.
Sure. I mean, the last part of the org, shipping itself into the product, that's very much Conway's law. That's been around for a while for sure. And before we touch on that, the shipping theater part, I mean, often in that absence of clarity on what you should be doing, so clear metrics, clear impact in what you're doing, then all that really remains is the celebration of shipping things. And I think we've all maybe worked at companies in the past where you have big bang launches a few times a year. Everything's about the big splash. The team gets celebrated when you ship, but the team never celebrates or is praised when they do the right thing or say no, as you said before, which is the most important thing. So I think if there isn't real clarity in what you're doing and measurement that you're solving the right problems, then all that's left is ship the thing, regardless of whatever the thing is. And I think that is a very dangerous culture because you chase the shipping date, you chase the deadline, you chase the deliverable, rather than the proof that what you're doing is the right thing.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And moving to Smriti, actually, if your engineering team has a thesis about what it should be focused on, how do you validate that thesis?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think I'll talk about my three-phased approach to how I even form the thesis. For me, the first is, the top-down phase that I think about it, which is focusing on the why and the who, tapping into intrinsic motivation, tapping into the setting and the context of whatever you're offering, whatever service you're building, whatever tooling you're providing or service for your users. And as you're thinking about that context, as you're building out your own business strategy or your technical strategy, you think about what is the maturity curve of your product. For us at Data Platform, our big data infrastructure was in the maturity phase where our users were focused more on the non-functionals like, efficiency, performance, security, reliability, availability. Whereas on the new and upcoming ecosystem of event processing, our users wanted more value maximizers. So key thing for me to figure out was what is the investment portfolio going to be in how much of our engineering bandwidth are we going to focus on the big data non-functionals versus the event processing investment work, which was aimed more for the strategic long term. And that then brings us to the who, which is who the people we're focusing on, which user cohorts do we have to go after, which are the key stakeholders. And lastly, who the people that we have on our teams as we are starting to sign up for problems. So my first phase is about that discovery and evaluation of the overall, where is your market in a sense, based on whatever you're sort of offering to your users. Taking that, you then will ask your teams to build out the what, the when, and the how. Here's where your teams are starting to focus on what problems they can solve. Teams have always thought about what innovation they want to invest in. And so the last phase then is about closing that loop between the top-down investment portfolio to say, let's focus X% on the big data infrastructure and break that down into reliability, security, performance, and the rest we're going to have the new long-term investment. And as you're doing that, for me, the big part of validating that thesis is about the constant iteration with your users and having that feedback, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. I think James earlier also talked about the focus on metrics. So I rely very heavily on what those are to determine if we truly landed the impact that we set out to achieve.
Very, very interesting. James and Rukmini, something that Smriti just brought up was kind of like looking at that investment, I call it investment profile, and saying, what percentage are we doing this and doing that? How does that work for the two of you?
I was just thinking about, for me, it comes down to prioritization of everything. Like it's not about how much you can do, it's about what you decide to do. Like, I think that's been the theme of our conversation. And you have to prioritize ruthlessly. There are going to be important things and there are going to be more important things. Everything's important, right? But some things start to drop. The way I think about it is like, for example, using a data-driven framework to actually prioritize. For example, something I've used in the past, like I collect a list of initiatives across the entire organization. I usually, in a 100% organization, I will get about 60 things people want to do, like initiatives. I'm not talking epics. I'm talking about large initiatives, right? And so what's worked for me in the past is grounding a group of cross-functional stakeholders in a data metric that we get. So for example, I have a simple scale in a Google Sheet, every engineer's favorite tool. It's not complicated. And I ask you, is this a customer ask? Is this a revenue opportunity? Is this vision? Is it competition? Is it architecture that we need to innovate on? Or is it technical debt? And I get all stakeholders to put scores on a scale of 1 to 5. It's a simple exercise, right? And then we tally up the total score. And now we have a shared view of reality on how important we think actually something is. Then I do the very engineering thing where I stack rank everything. And I'm like, now let's have a conversation. And it starts to become clear that not everything is important. But I think grounding in your team, that cross-function team in a prioritization exercise is the way you can actually validate what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, when it needs to be done, in the order in which.
Yeah, I feel so many things are exactly what we're going through at the moment. And I think what's really interesting as well is that often the most important things are the hardest to get done because they require the most cross collaboration, the most interconnections between all the teams. And I think this is where it kind of comes right back to the original question, which was, the org chart shipping itself happens when people shy away from the difficult collaboration because you go, you know what, this is too complicated. We're just going to do our own thing over here and ship our own thing because we know we can do it. But, the right thing to do is, yes, we all need to sit down. There's like 8 teams here that need to all work together in order to get this thing done. But that thing that they do together is the really valuable thing.
Yeah, where mine was going, my mind started to go was actually, what does it feel like, or what are some of the behaviors that you've seen or like the outcomes that that you're on the right track? For example, James, I think you said, hey, it's like, it feels hard. We all have to get into a room and do something like difficult. And I heard maybe saying no or celebrating no's, but like, what are some of the feelings or outcomes so that you would know that maybe you're on the right track for that business alignment?
Metrics, right? Hopefully we're all measuring up as with outcome using some metrics framework. So whether it's OKRs or VTMOM or whatever it is, you will see movement in the metric. That's the immediate validation. With new products, you want to hear from your customers. You want to hear, like, Smriti said, quantitative and qualitative feedback. So you should have all these mechanisms where feedback's coming through. You're listening to them. You're able to process it and feed it back into the team. So there's different ways I prefer data-driven signals because I think if you ground yourselves in data and engage with your customers, learning their feedback is invaluable, right? That's the way you know things are going well.
What are the metrics that you're using?
I think for us, like if you ship a new product, I think, for example, it's usage. How are your customers adopting it? We ship developer platforms, right? So we recently launched Slack's platform to open beta. And what we are really keen on learning from our customers is, have we significantly improved your developer experience if you've actually developed on our platform before? What are the features that are providing a lot of value for you? Will you come back and use this again? Like, it's really important for us to have a pulse on not just, like we've talked about this before, Dan, I think in the prep calls as well. It's not about just acquiring new developers, but making sure the existing developers are happy with the progress we are making.
Yeah, super plus one to what Rukmini said. For us also, it starts and ends with the metrics, right? And therein it's about, don't measure what's easy to measure. You want to ensure that you are focusing on the right metrics as well, depending on the time horizon and the users that you're focusing on. For us, we had to make a hard decision when we saw some of those system health metrics to say, hey, we're getting close to the biggest holidays ever. What is the reliability, availability, and performance of our systems? And then we realized that over the last 4 to 6 weeks, and this was a couple of years ago, where some of our health metrics around our systems and services were not at where we would like them to be. And we had to do a collective push to prioritize some of that and put some of the feature work on the backlog based on what those metrics told us. So a lot of those strategic or even tactical prioritization decisions come from which metrics are you anchoring on, and are they then the right ones for the time horizon that you're working toward?
What about for you, James? That's like super, super interesting on the metric side. What's your opinion on that?
It's interesting. I completely agree with everything said so far. And I think also one really important thing is teams really understanding what sets of metrics that they should track. So are they launching a completely new product? Because then the metrics are more to do with that kind of initial explosive growth of adoption, usage, all of those initial signs that the thing that you're shipping is going to be sticky. But identifying that upfront is really, really important, because if you are shipping something new, but you're trying to measure it based on the kinds of things that you would measure a long-standing product that's been in operation for years, like you're measuring the wrong thing. And also I think that helps frame how it's built as well, how you approach a critical feature that's been around forever and iterating on that is very different to how you will bring a new product to life. I think making sure that the teams really understand the environment they're in with the product they're building is the leader to success there.
Yeah, absolutely. What came to my mind to ask all of you, of course, you have to have the right metrics, and there's metrics that are around product usage, there's metrics around developer experience, there's metrics around stability. And let's say that you have the right metrics. What do you do then with your engineers? Like, are you exposing them to the engineering team? Are you talking to them? How do you actually utilize the metrics in your organization?
I can share how I do it. So for me, my group's about 150 to 170. And so we've got teams of teams and then manager of managers. And each of these have their own charters and their own operational metrics and charter metrics. And what we then do is at a weekly cadence, I like to run 3 processes. I've got the innovation pipeline, which tracks what are the items under design, where we have design reviews or prototype demos. Then I've got the execution review, which talks about which are the critical projects we track into our goals and how's the engineering execution. And lastly, the operations and the maintenance of our systems and services, and then what are the metrics tracking them. So on a weekly cadence, we have those healthy conversations where we go through our metrics in this forum and have the lead engineers of the teams show up to talk about what the state of the metrics are. And the teams do it at a certain cadence at their levels too.
That's awesome. Are you also into the space metrics? Have you used those before, space?
So rebuilding that out. So I have both the luxury and also the downside of having most of our users be internal to Stripe. So since I operate infrastructure, most of our users are internal to Stripe. And as we thinking about what is good for them, we're starting to build a lot more of developer-focused tooling. So if you think about data as a 3-tier cake with the infrastructure and systems, if data is a first-class citizen, then the quality of the data itself. And then if humans are a first-class citizen, what are the tools and abstractions that they work with? And historically, my group's been focusing on the lowest tier of this cake, which is infrastructure. So we've got our metrics for reliability and performance. But as we're moving up the cake, we haven't done a great job in defining what or how to quantify developer experience for the tooling that we're providing. And that's where we're starting to invest very heavily in space to think about lead time, cycle time, and just to see what the razor sharp edges of our systems looks like.
That's we could probably do a whole panel just on that topic. And I honestly don't know, James or Rukmini, if you've been exploring this or not, but one of you said, right now it's not about working harder in this time. It's more about efficiency, and all of these developer experience metrics and things to help developers are about efficiency, reduce cognitive load, make sure everyone's, getting time to do their work. So for the two of you, is that something that's top of mind for you now, or are you doing anything around this DevX is what they call it, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's early days. I think we still need to get a lot better at measuring them. But I mean, it's interesting because it's sometimes been a touchy subject about measuring engineers as some horrific thing to do. And certainly we don't measure individuals, we don't measure lines of code, but I think there are lots of super important things. The time it takes to merge a pull request, the time it takes to get your first pull request review. If our engineers raising pull requests and it takes 3 days to get a response, there's a big problem there. And it's less to do with measurement for punishment or measurement for grading, but it's measurement for discussion. And that discussion is like the most important thing. And if you can regularly measure and automate these things, just go, that looks a bit strange. What's going on there? And just a simple mindset change can save days on a project,
I heavy +1 to that. I think, I've been on this podcast before, Dan, and we've talked about this, but maybe deja vu for you. It's data is only half the story. There's a human element that you cannot ignore. That's the other half. It's context for the data that you're measuring. It's really important to understand. I love like merge time metrics because it tells me that there is something like you should assume best intent. You should trust your team. There could be some hurdle that they're facing. Maybe a spec's not getting ready on time, or like we said, the hardest things to solve sometimes a collaboration, right? So maybe it takes 8 different teams to get back to them to be able to close something. And that's a beginning of a conversation you can have with people to understand what are some roadblocks. Your job as leadership is to remove roadblocks for your team. That is your job, and help them be able to move faster. It's not to be able to measure people on being efficient. But I think that's just a common misconception. And I feel like when you invest in trust and health in your organization, um, you can have these conversations more candidly and you can root yourself in it. So I've always been a fan of all developer metrics and productivity metrics. I love merge time, pull time, cycle time's my favorite. So it's like you can, but it all comes with you need to understand the human behind the metric. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
I absolutely love what Rukmini said about it. It's the beginning of the conversation. And as data centric as we all are, the human element speaks for itself. And at times it speaks for volumes. And as you think about it and you think in systems and systems of systems, you realize that there isn't a wrong deploy or an IC who messed up or a service which crapped out. It is how each of this interacts and what is the entire story shaping out to be. And like I think Rukmini said, which is, it is as leaders our responsibility to ensure we've built the trust where folks feel comfortable, whether they're asking the 5 whys or doing incident postmortems, to be able to get to the truth of things such that we learn and we get better over time.
Amazing stuff. I love what all of you said. And Rukmini, something like kind of pop for me. You said something along the lines of the job of an engineering leader is to unblock, right? So if you're having a conversation with a developer, it's not about their performance, but hey, maybe I can see from the data that the pull requests aren't going so well right now. Your stuff's been sitting up there for like 2 weeks. Are you feeling that? That's like a great conversation to have in that PR areas where that collaboration, it's multiple people. It takes like a village to get a PR merge these days, multiple people coming together. And I was wondering if there's, and I love that area, but I was wondering if there's also other areas. You said you love cycle time, that you see bottlenecks or any other, kind of bottleneck area that you all would want our listeners here to kind of inspect, let's say, or dive into.
I can share a little bit about cycle time because I'm very passionate about it, because at the end of the day, we are here to talk about how we can make businesses better, right? And how we can connect developers to a business bottom line. There is no better metric than a cycle time to connect you to the businesses, your customers, because it literally means, for those who don't know, the time it takes for your code to show up to your customer, right? And I feel like teams with shorter cycle times always are more efficient. They unblock themselves a lot faster. And this is a differentiator and you're able to innovate quicker. You're able to get feedback quicker, right? That way your loop is going much faster. And more importantly, for startups or, when it's in a crowded product category, it can literally make differentiation in the market for you, right? Resulting in hopefully more value and more pay for the engineers on the team. So I think cycle time is a really important metric because in the end of the day, we are all here to serve our customers.
Absolutely. Is that something, and feel free for anyone else to jump in, but, with the cycle time metric or another metric, is that something that you have to explain to the business and to the engineers to kind of educate? Like, if so, how do you connect these metrics back to the business and to the developers?
I can go. I think a common misconception I've encountered is if left to their own devices, engineers are probably working on science fiction projects. And, having been an engineer myself, to me, the early years of engineering is, the joy of coding. But as you mature, you realize that the true joy comes from the people you work with and the people for whom you're solving problems, which is our users. And giving you my own example, I recently ran this exercise called FAS, Feedback as a Service, where I asked folks during the performance cycle as they were writing their self-evaluations to say, hey, if you need help with how you are writing down your self-eval, I will help anchor your self-evaluation in terms of the impact you've landed to the business. And believe it or not, the 15 to 20 folks who showed up, their entire self-evaluation was about the details of engineering and the project, which were great. But I distinctly remember this one IC who had worked on Ruby garbage collector optimization. And it was a phenomenal engineering problem. And then when I asked them, hey, what impact, what was the result of this work? What was the outcome? Like, yeah, it reduced the tail. And I was like, do you know how much it reduced your tail latency by? And as I explained to the IC, not just the revenue impact of every millisecond of latency that was saved, but also the user experience in having made this change, there was this moment of recognition and pride, which I saw flash before their eyes. And so to me, ICs want to see how their work relates to the impact and outcome, especially for our users. And I found that to be super gratifying and a great closing the loop for them too.
I love that. And I think, now more than ever, speed, resiliency are features. They really are. And things that are fast, that work well, build trust, that make your customers happy. We would much rather use something that is quick and reliable than, we all remember the sort of like Windows 95 Excel screenshot with like 20 toolbars with all the features. And you're like, no. We just want a few things that work really well. And we really celebrate those sort of speed wins here. We really celebrate deleting code. We really celebrate decommissioning services as well, because, reliable, fast products is fantastic.
Seems like we're going back to the efficiency theme, James, here over and over again.
I think so. And you asked about other metrics. One other thing I love as well is incidents, production incidents. I don't love them when they happen, but they are an amazing learning tool. And if you can have a culture where when these things happen, they are blameless, they are used as an opportunity for the organization to learn, tracking your incidents, writing them up, sharing the context of what happened, why, what we did to make it better, they're incredible learning opportunities. And measuring those over time, seeing whether they're getting better, getting worse, again, stimulates the discussion of what you should be investing your time in as an engineering leader in your teams.
The plus one to blameless incident management culture. Slack does it really, really well. And, we always encourage engineers, no matter what level you want, try it on, be a major IC. It's a great opportunity to learn how to collaborate during an incident and, see the best of people in a way. And it's fascinating. I think in my prior life, younger years, I used to be so afraid to be on an incident. And, now it's just really amazing to see how the team can come together, take their learnings in service of our customers. Again, I think you all said it, the best service is one that's available and always reliable, right? So, a great opportunity.
Sorry, one thing to add, and I'd be curious to see Rukmini and James how you think about it, is whether cycle time, whether space. I've seen these metrics do a good job of talking about, speed, agility, quality, and even impact to say, okay, do you move the needle or not? I think one thing I've been curious to hear about is how do we measure precision, which is between the problem space and solution space. There is always a gap. And how do you sort of reduce the feedback loop to see, okay, is the solution you're going about truly going to move the problem for your user? And I'd love to hear thoughts on how each of you approached that part of the story, which is you got the right problem to solve, but did you solve it correctly or go about it the right way? How do you sort of validate that?
Tricky question. I don't have a definitive answer, but things that certainly help. So, I think all of us are very privileged to work for companies that ship to many, many users. So you have great ability to experiment, A/B test, to ABCDEF test if you want to, and get real, quantitative data about what you're doing, to run experiments. I think also flipping that on its head and zeroing in on individual customers, if you can really get some time with them to connect them to the teams, to discuss whether what they've done really does make an impact, to get that qualitative data from them as well. The reason I keep looking at my background and then wondering where I am is because I'm in a hotel room. We're in Edinburgh with the team this week, meeting up for the first time. But most importantly, we've met 4 actual customers on site who are our merchants, spend time with them, talk to them about what we want to build in the future, which is some iterations of things we already have. Get that feedback as well. Say, hey, if you could wave a magic wand in this space and we had all of these features, what would you pick? And then we sort of use that combination of real human connection plus the sort of the millions, tens of millions of visitors, of users kind of aspect. And then somewhere in the middle, we meet.
Nice.
Yeah.
But you don't always get it right. Sometimes you just hard.
Yeah. And, I think I also think of I tell the team to take pride in things that we've scrapped, right? Things that we knew. It's really hard. I know you've invested, but if there wasn't value and you scrapped it, that's a celebration, Not to your comment about shipping theater, celebrate the things you scrapped because we didn't need it and you didn't continue to pour resources down on something that wasn't adding value. It's not a bad thing. It's not a failure. There's learnings and you're able to let go and move forward. And I think just to add back to scale, we all have the luxury of scale. We're very privileged. On top of that, I think it's super important to ship in cohorts to customers to get qualitative feedback as you go through your product lifecycle, especially if you're introducing a brand new product. I would say identifying an alpha set. First, Slack, we eat our own dog food. Our customers is our Slack instance, Tidy Spy. And we start there and we iterate a lot internally, but we also know that sometimes we can be in our own bubble. And then we try to identify an alpha set of customers, a private beta, then a public beta. That's typically the journey of a platform. And then we go to GA. So at every step, we're measuring ourselves. This is a hard thing to do.
Do you all? Yeah, that's wonderful. I was kind of imagining myself. I've been in situations where the engineering team is really not that close to the customers, and that's kind of maybe a previous culture or something that you want to change. Do you all have any tips of, kind of the first things that you could do to get your developers closer to the customer outcome?
Communicate. Talk about your customers to them till they are tired of hearing it. That's what I say. I'll give you very practical tips. I use Slacklamp, which is an async video thing to record top of mind CD for my team. I drop it in channel. It's asynchronous. It's 2-3 minutes. Here's a top of mind. Here's what matters this week. Also disseminating the organization, Smriti had mentioned, managers. Every staff meeting, you want to disseminate the information. I have office hours that people come to every week that they can ask me any questions and I try to talk them with customers. And finally, one-on-ones. I think you cannot underestimate the influence you can have in a one-to-one conversation, but I would say communication is key.
Yeah, super plus one to what Rukmini said. At least I follow at least 3 to 4 forms of communication to ensure that information's rolled out, because that info flow up and down, and then not just the lag, but the currentness of it sort of tell you about which medium you also need to refine. In addition to that, at Stripe, we have a very important operating principle of users first, which also manifests throughout how we work with each other, how teams plan, how we engineer, including in the performance conversations. So all of that helps sort of foster that culture of keeping users at the heart of engineering.
Yeah, really, really similar viewpoints here at Shopify as well. We have this sort of adage that we throw around internally, which is 3 rules. Rule number 1 is make the best product. Rule number 2, make money so you can do more of number 1. And then rule number 3 is never get them the wrong way around. Yeah, that's kind of what we go by. And I think on a more micro level, we do a really good job internally of sharing merchant stories all the time because they are so inspirational. We have companies who've gone from someone's spare time hobby through to IPOing, and that's just incredible. And just, I encourage people, just pick up the phone or the virtual phone. If you have a bug from a merchant who's struggling with something, just get them on a call, have a chat. They're humans. And it's that bit where you connect to a human rather than a bug ticket, or a human rather than a feature request. That's when it just becomes really fun. Like, you get to feel like you do actually have great tools and powers to make an impact in the world.
Customer empathy, right? Like literally, I think, I started my career in consulting. So customer empathy back in those days meant the customer was literally sitting beside me at all times. I think luckily we are no longer in that place. That's a little dreadful to thinking back instead of PTSD from some of that. But, I think it just comes down to making sure your team understands the why behind their work.
Yep.
And in Slack, we have product principles, and you all, I hope, use Slack. And it's some of the product principles, like, it's our vision is to make everyone's work life simple and productive. And we hope that as users, you're experiencing that, right? So we use our product principles like be a good host, like don't make me think. These are things we root ourselves in. So when we're building features in our interface, we have to think about that front and center. And we hope that every change, like we can follow those principles. So.
And for me, again, I have the privilege of having my users within Stripe. And so one thing I routinely encourage ICs on our team to do is embeds, like a couple of 2-week embeds with internal teams who are users of the things that we are supporting and building, to be able to then decide, are we building the right thing? Are we focusing on the right users? Do we have their pain points understood correctly? So I found that to be super useful as well, to sort of refine the solution space as we are figuring out the problems.
Amazing advice. What an excellent panel. You all are doing a great job. And I kind of wanted to wrap everything up here. Going back to what we were saying, really early on, I keep having this word efficiency come up. And again, referencing kind of the economic climate, things are a little bit tighter right now in all areas of the business, including engineering. And one of the things I think is super important is inspiration. So especially for, the engineering team. So I kind of wanted to wrap us on a lighter note. Can start with James, but of course everyone, jump in. How are you keeping your teams at Shopify inspired to keep solving, problems and improving efficiency?
Yeah, I guess I'll build on what I said earlier. I mean, we're super fortunate that what we do is allow people to run their own businesses, to be entrepreneurial, to be financially independent, whatever their story is. So even just within that, it's inspiring. And I think for engineers, especially when we are organizing a few times a year for teams to get together, we always encourage them to find local merchants in the city that they're meeting in, spend some time with them, connect with the human being, because then that person isn't just one data point in a data points of millions. They become a story, a human, a friend, someone you can talk to. And just sitting down with a few merchants over the last couple of days, from someone who's a coffee roaster to a brewery to a jewelry brand, the stories are so completely different, but every single one is really inspiring. And it makes you come back and go, hey, you know what? I'm going to do a really good job today because that is the person I'm helping.
Yeah, that's awesome. Rukmini, I have a note here. I mean, you can go any direction you want, but kind of looking at more of the experience side. And we talked about this, I think, on the pod, but you have a Makers Week at Slack.
Yeah.
How does that relate to kind of the people and inspiration?
If you come back to like this last 3 years have been incredibly difficult, right? We're all running, like have no concept of human connection anymore, or running on fumes of what used to be an in-person connection. And we all had to learn to work in a different way, but our calendars got busy and we just started doing things and becoming very transactional. So in Slack, we've heard from our teams, and we've intentionally created this concept of a Maker Week every month, where you can actually build something in service of your customers or do something creative without the overload. So we cancel all standing meetings. They're all canceled, and you get time to build. And we are, again, like we said, we eat our dog food. So we're really like trying very hard to make sure we are practicing the asynchronous communication habits as much. So in that week, something that will be a live meeting, be a Slack clip, or, and we try to propagate that information. But Maker Weeks have been great. Like there are a lot of interesting projects that are coming out of Maker Weeks that we wouldn't historically have had time to, or people are like, come back and say, hey, I realized that we can solve this customer problem and this is how we should do it. And I've done it, right? Which is, it's a cognitive, the load goes away and you're able to free up. And it's been great so that you get some breather and also feel inspired.
Amazing, amazing. And Smriti will end, with you. Want to make sure that, you get a voice here, but, at Stripe, what are you doing to inspire or keep your engineers happy?
Thanks, Dan. I will say before I talk about what I do, I love Rukmini's idea of Maker Week at a monthly level. And I'd love to sync up after Rukmini to hear more about, the planning, prioritization, logistics of how you make that happen. For me, I want to go back to my core principle, which is as important as efficiency is for the business, it is important to balance it with empathy as well. I think Rukmini earlier also called out. But what does that look like, whether it's for your users, for the teams and the orgs that you are leading? And in that, for me, I think a lot about how to provide food for the body, mind, and soul. And each looks different for different people. For some, when I think about food for the soul, it's a lot about how are folks feeling stretched, how are they learning, how are they growing, how are they being challenged. The last 3 years have been hard, as we just heard. And the questions there are like, what does burnout look like? And how are we then making sure we're creating the right safe space for folks to talk about things which are hard, and also make sure that we've got the right balance between radical candor, growth mindset, and psychological safety. And at the very heart of it, it is always easy to know or focus on what we could get better at, but it is important to also recognize and celebrate all the hard work done, tying it back to the why and the impact with the focus on users.
I love that. And I just want to say, like, celebration. Remember to celebrate all the small wins. We have a thread that's called Awesome Sauce Time. That's literally what it's called every Thursday evening. And it's basically the entire team high-fiving each other virtually. It's like, you did this, thank you, it's amazing. And it's like, that's my favorite thread of the week because it makes me feel that everything's okay. We'll be fine, and it's inspiring to see how people have been helping each other.
Amazing. And I love the collaboration that I'm already even seeing between the three of you. Of course, that's one of the main reasons that we started Interact. And I'm sure our panel guests, if you're, in the audience listening, would be happy to have a conversation about any of the topics that we've gone through today. Rukmini, James, and Smriti, thank you all for an amazing conversation today and for joining us at Interact. And also a big thank you to everyone who's watching us at home or joining us from the office. I hope you all enjoyed this conversation as much as I have a round of applause. It will probably be silent for our guests here today. Awesome job. Of course, today's discussion was made possible by LinearB. LinearB helps teams like yours continuously improve by providing correlated data context and automated workflows that help streamline code delivery and improve the developer experience. LinearB is free for dev teams, so check it out at linearb.io. And everyone, have a great Interact.